Welcome everyone to the Infinite Jurisdiction podcast with your friend Gonzalo, where I discuss my journey through law school. This will be the first episode of the podcast as I count down to the end of my law school career. In this podcast, I'll be sharing my journey through the interesting and difficult, stressful, convoluted, amazing road to a Juris Doctorate. Um, in this series, I hope to share, personal stories as well as provide useful advice to either current law students or prospective law students, undergrads, or high schoolers, and provide them with information that they might find useful in some way or another. This video will normally take the form of 3 sections. In the first, I'll talk about what it is I'm currently doing during the week that's associated with legal things or school. In the second part of this podcast, I'll be talking about some general law school concept or thing that I think is important that everyone knows. And I'll lastly end with interesting legal ideas that I'm currently learning about, which I think are intellectually interesting. And so that's how this podcast will go. And this is very exciting. This is the first episode in what will be a very interesting enterprise once it's all over. So let's begin. So first part, what's going on this week? So we are currently in the summer. I am a rising 2L. For those of you who don't know, law school takes 3 years if you're pursuing it full time. Normally in the summer between your first year and second year, you are in an internship where you're gaining legal experience in whatever it is, whatever legal field you're trying to pursue. And unfortunately, I was not lucky to score a position. So I'm in this weird position where I don't have school and I'm not gaining experience. So from a from a competitive employment standpoint, it doesn't feel good. But I'm trying to make the most out of this summer. I know a few people who also weren't able to get internships, so they're also trying to scramble for ways to gain experience as quickly as possible, because law school, even though it's 3 years, you only have so much time to gain experience, and that's what employers are mainly looking for, experience. So that being said, because I don't have an internship and it's a little too late in the summer to get one, which will have to end in less than a month because school is starting soon, I just have to find ways to become a better student or would-be lawyer with what I could do without an internship. And for me, that's taking the form of trying to become a better legal writer. My torts professor was opining about the bar and lamenting the fact that there's still multiple choice questions, and he says, at no time will a judge ask you in a multiple choice format about some legal question or other. He said, quite rightly, lawyers write. That's what we do. So even though there's quite a range of what lawyers do, depending on your field and your position, most of the time you're engaging in some form of writing. So that's what skill I'm trying to focus on right now. I'm looking at various how-to books, and I'm trying to refine my grammar, and just practicing the writing. And I think I'm making some progress on that. I didn't do well in middle school, elementary, and I kind of did better in the second half of high school. So my basics are just garbage. My grammar's terrible. I had to learn where to put a comma, and where to put a semicolon and all that kind of stuff. So it's very satisfying to be learning that stuff finally. So it's rewarding, but that's the focus for me right now, is the writing aspect. So that's what I've been doing this week, and preparing for the fall summer as well, getting ready to see what kind of classes I want to take, and also preparing to start submitting applications for internships next summer, or even in the fall, depending on what those prospects look like. So that's what I'm doing this week. Always interesting, always busy. Moving on to the second thing is general theme about law school. So this week, as one is thinking about one's career trajectory, which is it's almost as important as like the substantive stuff you're learning in law school. For many people in undergrad, if you were to draw like a pie chart of their mental energy, a vast majority of it would be learning the substantive material for whatever it is discipline they're pursuing. In law school, there is that component, but synchronous with that is a similar effort in one's career pursuit. You have to be working on your resume, your cover letters, your sample writing, networking all the time. One also has to be dealing with the Career Services Center for their school and talking with counselors, going on interviews, and so the career aspect is always there in a law student's mind, along with learning one's coursework. So it can get very how would you say, stressful and intimidating, and one way to decrease the intimidation of having to worry about so many things, not only school but your job path, is early on trying to find what it is you want to do, because the law is such a broad concept. When someone says they want to practice law, it's similar to saying one wants to be a writer. That could mean a lot of things. And so you want to be able to narrow what it is you're trying to pursue, or else the opportunities that abound in law school will seem daunting. Should I be doing that? And should I apply for that? And should I be networking with those people? Should I join this club? Should I join that honors program? If your search is narrowed by knowing what it is you want to pursue, you make the opportunities that are everywhere kind of narrow, and it's a little bit more manageable. This has been very hard for me, I will admit. My background is philosophy, which in many cases will mean that I'm a textbook overthinker. So it's it's always been difficult for me to settle on a specific course, um, because I always overthink what it means. If I want to choose being a personal injury lawyer per se, I am thinking through all of the outcomes and meanings and uh, implications that has. Do I want to spend my life kind of doing this kind of work, or should my attention be focused on something else, or do I really want to focus on this type of intellectual enterprise? And so it's been hard for me to choose because there's just so much you could pursue. As I mentioned earlier, the law is varied and diverse, and it's hard to pick one personally. uh, I wonder how many people struggle with this kind of problem. I asked a professor about this, and he similarly had problems, but he had a friend who, from undergrad knew exactly the type of lawyer he wanted to be, was that lawyer, and had been that lawyer for 30 years. So some people obviously don't have this issue, but I did and do, and it'll be interesting if I'm ever absolutely settled in the path. At some point there might be a moment of risk taking where I'm going to say, let's just try this. And for all the advice on planning and goals and being organized and knowing what it is you want to do, I think that's going to work for me in the end. I hear a lot of lawyers. I watch a lot of YouTube, and I hear a lot of judges say that when they look back at their career in hindsight, people often will say that there was this predetermined plan that they pursued, but many of these judges were quite honest and said, I could have never imagined this is the way it was going to go. I had no plan. This is just how it turned out. So I take comfort in those, in that sentiment, and hope something similarly is in store with me. Just finding something and not being perpetually skeptical about what career I'm pursuing in the law. So that's kind of a theme of law school. Try to find what it is you want to pursue. That'll help you narrow down the daunting task that it is in law school to follow career prospects. And if you don't, maybe that's fine. We'll see. Lastly, I'll end very shortly on what it is I'm learning in the legal world. In law school, they teach you how to think like a lawyer. There's a lot of discussion about learning rules and how to apply them to facts and other key legal skills like researching and writing. But how do I say this? Again, my background is philosophy, so I like engaging in this kind of philosophical approach about the actual substance of the law, which is sometimes neglected in the classroom. But that's not to the fault of the teachers. Their job is to teach the curriculum, not opine, which is really what should happen in a seminar. But I do like to talk about these subjects in an intellectual kind of manner. And so this is what this section of the podcast is about, just interesting legal ideas that I'm currently thinking about. And at present, the idea that I have in my head and I'm thinking a lot about is kind of across different approaches to the nature of law, or questions of law, and how different nations do things differently in their respective legal systems. And I'm currently reading this book, A Very Short Introduction to Law by Raymond Wax. I highly recommend it. Short read. I know law students are very busy, but it's a short read. I recommend it. But I believe the author must be European, because he includes a lot of examples from Europe. In America, we have the common law system, which is different in a variety of ways to the civil system in parts of Europe. And it's just interesting to learn about all the differences. How do they go about with their criminal justice system? How do their judges work? Are their lawyers similarly obsessed with case law, or are they more concerned with the statutes? Just interesting things like that I'm learning about. And the reason I think it's interesting is because I like learning about the ways different people do the same thing. They're all trying to get at the same kind of thing, right? Justice or an effective legal system. And from an intellectual perspective, one sits there and likes to think about, who has the best way of doing this. The common law system or the civil system, and not necessarily that those two systems, but even different ways the U.S. does things compared to the U.K., which are both common law systems, but still do things differently. It's interesting to think about. And whenever people are engaged in solving legal issues, legal concepts, I think it is useful to have this what would you say? Cross-national, cross-cultural, cross-legal system approach, where you consider all the ways that people go about solving or asking legal questions. So that's on my mind this week. As one goes through law school, it'll be interesting learning more and more about, the differences that the systems have, and as a lawyer, there is a wish to not only, this is for me, I would say, there's not only a wish to, practice law, to become a master of one's craft as a lawyer, but perhaps if one works hard enough and is lucky to contribute in some positive manner to a major legal change, which pushes society forward in a good way, whether that be changes to tort law, or changes to whatever area of law that you're passionate about. So, food for thought. So that covers what I wanted to cover in this week of the podcast. First episode is over. Wow. Can't wait to do these every week. So that's it. I'll see you guys next week. Bye-bye.